And okay, so we're on a roll and we are going live. And I just want to say, because you gentlemen don't know this, that we have this private thing with Shit Happens, Deal With It. And it's not really 3 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock. Somewhere.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
5 o'clock.
It's somewhere it's 5 o'clock.
Yes.
Oh man,
So cheers.
would have had my glass of wine right here.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
Okay, good.
What you got? Coconut water?
No, I got
Yeah.
the clean protein.
Oh,
the
some
plant
protein.
Yeah.
It's what you get out of it that makes a difference, you know. So it could
That's
be
right.
water, it could be coconut juice.
Yeah.
So guys out there today, welcome to Shit Happens, Deal With It. I'm Margie, and I have my co-host Patty with me. Many of you know Patty. She's our political correspondent for Shit Happens. So thank you for joining us today. So, you know, strange things happen when you're on the golf course. Please note, I said on the golf course, not playing golf, because that would be a whole nother topic. But on the golf course, I happened to be at a fundraising tournament and noticed this very handsome gentleman who was very well dressed. So I said to my friend Cecily, my co-host Cecily, I go, what do you think he does? And she said, he's probably a runway model. I go, yeah, he's, yeah.
Wow.
I said, you know what? He could be an artist. He looks like he could be an artist.
This is off to a great start.
And she said, no, I still think he's like a runway model. She says, watch him walk up to the golf and hit the ball. So, you know, so we're women. And so I'm going, yeah, you could be right. And then I said, well, you know what? I think he's a designer because his clothes are just so. So this gentleman was the topic of our conversation until we said, hey, we think that you win the fashion award today for the tournament. So we introduced ourselves. Come to find out, he's none other than Dr. Moore, who's probably never been on a runway before. I don't know. Maybe you have. So that was sort of kind of interesting for us. So nope, he's not a runway model, nor is he a designer. He's actually a surgeon, now practicing medical marijuana with our founder of the wellness group, and that's Dr. Damas, who is the founder. So welcome, Dr. Damas. Welcome, Dr. Moore. You both look strikingly different in those uniforms that you have on today, but fashionable nevertheless. So let me run through a few things before we get started here about these two gentlemen on with us today. Dr. Moore, he's a practicing general surgery and holistic medicine. What got him going in surgery was when he was 12, his father had open heart surgery. Well, he went on to pursue and understand, and he wanted to understand the impact that diet, exercise, you know, all the wellness things that we promise we're going to do every day. He wanted to see how that would affect somebody's health and recovery. Oh, Cecily is on. Excuse me.
Oh, wow.
Yes, just saw her. Let me admit her. Cecily. Hi, Cecily. She's there. Oh my God, there you are. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Hey, I'm
How
so
you
sorry.
doing? That's okay. Thank you for joining us under your circumstances. You're a rock star. You're a rock star.
I didn't want to disappoint. I'm trying to be there. So yes, hey.
So I'm going to just sort of catch you up to speed. I sort of kind of finished off on our conversation about Dr. Moore and his fashion apparel that he had on, and thinking he was a model. And yeah. Then come to find out that he's a surgeon. And I think the look on our face was, yeah, you're just too cute to be a surgeon. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think we both looked at each other, Dr. Damas, like, did he say a surgeon? I'm like,
is that right?
Yeah, right. Right.
Anyway,
I love it.
you made our day. So he graduated from, and we're talking about Dr. Moore's statistics right now. He graduated from Florida State, the Bachelor of Exercise Science, and then a master's in biological sciences, and he got that from the Barry University. And we're going to talk about what he empowers his patients to do, which is fascinating. I don't want to open that bag. He needs to open that bag. So let's talk about Dr. Damas a little bit. Dr. Damas is the former linebacker for the Buffalo Bills. Okay, excuse me, I know fashion, I know retail, I know golf and tennis. Where are the Buffalo Bills from?
Oh my God.
Buffalo?
Buffalo.
Oh, Patty. Is it Buffalo? Okay.
Hugely
I got
impressed.
that right then. You see, I'm not so stupid.
Yeah, I got another one for you. Who's
You
buried
what?
in Grant's tomb?
We know that. We're not just cute, okay? We know that one. We're not just cute. We are not just cute.
So Dr. Damas, he is a general surgeon as well from Albert Einstein College.
Not general surgeon, I was a radiologist.
Okay, and then I've got a diagnostic radiologist from Mount Sinai, right?
I did
So
my
not a
internship
surgeon.
No, my internship was in general surgery. So I dipped my toes in Dr. Moore's waters a little bit.
He's a
Yeah.
masochist. That's
Yeah,
what it
that's
is.
right. I'm a masochist. That's how I got these grades. That's how I got these grades, messing around in that internship.
And you also hold an MBA concentrating on healthcare management from Davenport University. And I was so pleased to see that you're on the board of directors for Athletes for Care. Great organization. Thank you for doing that. You're on plenty of other boards as well. These two gentlemen are probably two of the busiest people that I know, with the longest pedicure of degrees that I know as well. So esteemed, I would say yes. And thank you for being on. I do have a question for you, and it's for both of you. What and when led you to understand and believing that cannabis was the way to go? And is it the medicine of the future?
Nice one. Jay, you want to take that? I see Dr. Moore is like salivating. It's chomping at the bit.
Man. So the thing that first got me interested in cannabis as medicine was, it's kind of a sad story. So when I was in residency training, there was we had to work this prison ward, and I met a veteran who was in prison because of cannabis. Now he had an injury when he was deployed. He had like a shrapnel injury, and he ended up with some chronic pain. And they prescribed him all the opioids, Percocet, all that stuff that can have a lot of really bad side effects and can lead to all sorts of things. One of the worst things being addiction, obviously. And he decided that he wasn't going to go that route. He wanted to use cannabis as medicine instead. But unfortunately, federally and in Georgia at the time, and I think still now, cannabis is illegal. So he ended up a veteran, an injured veteran, ended up in prison because he chose to use cannabis to treat his symptoms. And to me, that kind of got me in. It got me thinking about the medicinal uses of cannabis and how well it was working for this gentleman. He told me, how much more helpful it was for him than the opioids were. And it also kind of got me into a little bit of the activism space because, what a tragic story. But, fast forward to now, the medical marijuana became legal in Florida right before I moved back down here in 2017. And, that was my opportunity to really start doing my research and reading about what cannabis physicians were doing and all of the different qualified conditions that they were treating. We'll get into that later, I'm sure, but it's such just trying to understand, like we're taught traditional Western medicine, and it's like, okay, you've got one condition. There are a few medications that can treat that one condition, but one medication isn't going to treat multiple conditions. Cannabis, on the other hand, can treat mean, we're still finding out how many different conditions cannabis can be a treatment for. So that right there piqued my interest, and that got my juices flowing, and here we are,
Wow.
learning more about it every
And
day.
so to answer that question, is this the treatment of the future? Is this the way that we are moving forward with treating ailments?
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the medications of the future. I mean, it's there is, and the reason why I say that is that there is so much more research that needs to be done because of the prohibition of cannabis in the United States. We've got very little federally funded, really robust, research projects that looked at cannabis and the different cannabinoids. So a lot of the information we have are old. The data's from other countries. But now that it's starting to become legalized in more and more places, now we can do the research that can actually put the science and the data behind some of the things that we've known for thousands of years about how marijuana and cannabis can be beneficial. So it was kind of like a medicine of the past, and now it's going to become a medicine of the future.
So Dr. Damas, why do you think it's taken so long for us to get to this point? If we understand the science behind, as Joshua just said, as if we understand all of the science, why has it taken so long? Is it just the stigma of it being a drug that is preventing us from really accepting the power that it can heal?
Well, the initial thing, like Dr. Moore just mentioned, is that this was a widely accepted medicine in the past. It was something that you found in everyone's medicine cabinet for a long period of time. It was not abnormal to find a bottle of cannabis oil in people's medicine cabinets because it did treat a number of common ailments. A lot of women use cannabis oil to help with menstrual cycle cramps and things like that, migraines, common aches and pains, was an alternative to the aspirins and the ibuprofens and the acetaminophen at the time. And so, we'd have to go a ways back and look at some of the things that took place historically in the United States, starting in 1937 with the Marijuana Prohibition and Tax Act. That was the first kind of nail in the coffin, the big nail in the coffin in terms of prohibition, and looking at the marketing or the propaganda campaign that was used in order to create a public sentiment against it. So you're talking about some of the words changing or using the word marijuana as opposed to cannabis, because prior to that, it was just strictly referred to by its scientific name, which is cannabis. And then this marijuana term came in as part of the campaign to kind of vilify it as a strange and foreign substance that would contribute to the degradation of the fabric of society. Right?
We call those dog whistles, right?
Yeah, dog whistles, right? And it, it was something that was used to kind of point out to the dangers of foreign invaders, Mexicans, minorities, brown-skinned people, African-American people who would kind of like permeate the wonderful spaces of American society with this awful drug. So that was, that part. And then you had obviously the financial ramifications that came along with it, right, as part of that policy, which made it difficult for physicians and pharmaceutical companies to continue to participate in the manufacture and distribution and writing of this, right? So then as it goes along, you get into, the reefer madness kind of propaganda campaigns, right, which help contribute to the stigmatization of it. And then you have these really punitive laws that were enacted as part of the Controlled Substances Act in the early 70s that was signed by Nixon, which then you're having really strong criminal punishments that are associated with it. And then you're looking at mass incarceration. So the combination of all of this, and once it was scheduled as Class 1, Schedule 1 drug in the as part of the Controlled Substances Act, now you had no access to it to do any research, because when you're in Schedule 1, that means you have no scientific or medicinal value. So you cannot research it. So that limited it. So, you're looking at 90 years, close to, or 80 years of prohibitive policies and propaganda, war on drugs, just say no, reefer madness, yada, yada, yada. And it had become a fabric of American society to look at it as something that should be kept at the margins, without evidence to actually support this.
Dr.
Wow.
Damas, I want to sort of just, a viewer has just texted me to say, I know this is a stupid question, but I'm new at this game. What is the difference between cannabis and marijuana?
Very, very, very good question. So the difference between cannabis and marijuana is semantics.
Yes, I was
Right.
about to say that. It's one and
Yeah.
the same, right?
Right, one and the same. Traditionally, when we look at it as a matter of form, when we're discussing the plant in the scientific realm, right, we'd say cannabis because that's the scientific name for it. But when we're discussing legislation or the legality of it, we use the term marijuana. So all the laws that are in place are marijuana laws. There's medical marijuana laws, the Marijuana Prohibition and Tax Act, right? You can be arrested for marijuana possession. And so that's usually used to legislative jargon, legal jargon. And then when you're referring to it in the scientific world, in the medicinal world, you use cannabis, but they're interchangeable.
So I have a question. I'm just
She
curious.
says, thank you.
So when you opened your practice, was there initial pushback to your practice, or did you have enough? Do you have enough patients who get it, want it, understand it? How has that changed for you?
I laugh with every once in a while. I talk to Dr. Moore about this. So then when I first opened my practice, I was still employed at the hospital, and they gave me a cease and desist. Like, you can't do both of these things, right? So it was like, you're gonna have to choose one. You're gonna be a radiologist, or you're gonna be involved in this medical marijuana thing. You can't do both. And so, like, we went through a lot of like hand wringing and meetings and lawyers. Like, it went that deep, and eventually, I had to choose a direction. Like, was I going to go with my passion and what I felt I needed to do, and give up security and all this stuff that I had worked towards, right? Or was I going to stay safe and stay in my comfortable situation, which I didn't really like that much, which I actually didn't really like that much, but it was something I had worked towards all my life, and I had achieved it, but it wasn't fulfilling, and it wasn't something that I knew that would fulfill me personally, and it wasn't my mission in life. So eventually, I had to make the tough decision and jump in. And I was fortunate, I think, to start because I had a history of playing sports, being in the NFL. And so my initial, patients, my group of patients had a lot of support from the former football players, who had gone through the same things that I had gone through, which led me down this path. So those guys were really, really instrumental in helping build the practice and, kind of getting things going for me.
Dr. Moore, it's interesting because, and I'm glad both of you, Dr. Damas and Dr. Moore, you both have your backstory, your why as to why you're doing this and how you got into it. And I love that it came with a sense of pain on both levels, right? But to Patty's point, like, there's always that term, weed head, right? And so I was so shocked when you said that you were, not that you were, I wasn't shocked that you were a surgeon by any stretch of the imagination, but when you said that,
He's way too good looking.
But listen, you have a great billboard right now. You better use him while you can, Dr. Damas, right? Okay. That is okay. But I was really shocked when you started to talk to me about the whole cannabis thing, because I know that I have this stigma about weed, marijuana, cannabis, whatever that looks like. And I have an issue with stroke in my life. And so my sisters and my friends have said, Cecily, you should try it. Take these gummies. I'm like, y'all are freaking crazy. I'm not taking gummies. I'm not doing the brownies. I'm not doing any of that because I have a level of fear only because of what I know what could happen if I'm caught in my Louis. There's, some marijuana. So how do you handle all of that as you're really trying to say, hey, this can really, really help you on a serious level, this could be the answer to the pain that you're receiving.
It's kind of a fun game for me, honestly, because when you really, for as deep-seated as this stigma is, for most people, it's very thin when you start to talk about it, right? Because the reason why folks have all of these misconceptions about cannabis, and there's the weed head stigma and everything, is because there's been a really purposeful campaign, mostly on the legal side of things, to tell you that it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. But there hasn't been the science to say that it's bad, because it's a very safe medication. So when I start talking to people and I'm like, okay, so what is it that you're concerned about? Are you concerned about overdose? Are you concerned about becoming addicted? Are you concerned about
That part.
becoming
I will
lazy?
say that's my concern. My concern is like, oh, am I going to be addicted? Am I going to be like, I don't. So that's my concern as an individual out there.
But Cecily,
Sure.
I mean, think about it from our point of view. We are the patients. So we go to a medical doctor to prescribe something to us, and then they follow up with us, and we have certain procedures. Now, I think when you worry about addiction, these two guys and many of them that are following in their footsteps are the doctors who will help us not become addicted. I don't think, and after my conversation with Dr. Damas the other day, I don't think we just sort of said, here's a bag of marijuana, good luck.
Right.
I think
So,
that there's that follow-up,
Yeah.
and are you an addictive person? Do you have those behaviors? But I absolutely 100% understand you, because I've got an addictive, personality.
I think that after Margaret told me a little bit about, like, gave me your bios, and I did some research on both of you, so I was really fascinated. But you're not only just talking about cannabis, you're talking about diet, exercise, you're talking about a holistic life, what you surround yourself with, this is all how we move forward. And I think that we're at a time when there's a very enlightened American population that is starting to understand we need to incorporate all of this to be healthier people. And I think there's a lot of that in your back, as I went through and read some things. And I do think that it's just another thing that goes along with all of those good things we know to do, or that we should be learning to do to have a better life.
I think to her point, with regards to the addiction, I think that comes along as part of the lack of knowledge, the lack of information that's been available, right? And so people are left up to their own devices. They can kind of invent things, or they can go along with, like Dr. Moore says, some of the propaganda. But if we actually look, first of all, addiction is possible through anything that gives you a reward, right? So you can be addicted to sex, gambling,
Shoes.
Shopping.
Louis bags.
People do get addicted to shopping because of the euphoria, right? You spend the thing, you get this reward that you purchase, and then you have to do more and more of it, because each time you make that purchase, there's a release of these, neurotransmitters that give you this pleasurable sensation. So there are a lot of things that have addictive potential, but when you parse down the numbers in terms of people who develop what we would call a cannabis use disorder, as opposed to any other activity, there really is no difference. There's no significant increased risk from cannabis use than any number of other activities, right? And you contrast that to opioids, where, like we talked about, Dr. Moore discussed in our last journal club, and he was giving out incredible statistics on this, was, what was it, 29% of users.
21 to 29% of users with chronic pain who get prescribed opioids
misuse those.
Yeah, 8 to 12% end up with a opioid use disorder, and then somewhere around 4 to 6% end up addicted to heroin, or make the transition to heroin.
Wow.
They've said that they've called cannabis in the past a gateway drug. There's no evidence to support anything near you know,
Yeah.
opioids are
But I think that's why you guys are
opioids
more
actually stronger.
And I think that's why you guys are focused on not just the cannabis side, to Patty's point, that it's an overall holistic wellness. So you talk about for a moment the other things that you prescribe to your patients when you're talking with them about their overall wellness.
I think one of the things that I'm proud of in terms of what we do is that when a patient comes in for a consultation with us, is that they have an opportunity to spend a good amount of time with us. So now we're not doing this volume-based thing where it's like, you know, you get 10 minutes, 10 minutes, doctor boom, boom, in and out, and it's gone, right? And that, like, we go in there and we specifically say, this is the problem, like, I'm gonna change your tires. And then once I change your tires, I don't know about the oil and the transmission and all of that. You're going to see somebody else for that, right? So they have an opportunity to speak to us about a number of issues because, you know, a lot of these things are interconnected. For example, we get a great deal of patients that have chronic pain. You know, chronic pain is a debilitating condition, and it actually severely affects quality of life. And as a result, it actually overlaps and contributes to other things, right? There could be a disease process that's causing the chronic pain, and then that chronic pain is causing other things like depression, right? Like anxiety, like insomnia, right? And so the patient may come in and say, yeah, I have this chronic pain condition, but it's as a result of my rheumatoid, you know, my rheumatoid arthritis, or I have chronic pain because of my fibromyalgia. You go into fibromyalgia, then that's something that you suffer through a lot before you get a diagnosis. And so there's the psychological impact of that. And so we do have the opportunity to speak to them about diet, exercise, seeking care from mental health professionals, self-care. So there's all these things that are kind of interconnected, and we fortunately enough have the background in these things. Like, who knew, like, you know, when Dr. Moore was doing exercise phys as an undergrad, that's something that he would incorporate into his medical practice at some point later, right? So it's an interesting thing that kind of accumulating these skills over time helps make you a better clinician, a physician in this aspect, as opposed to our specialties, you know, surgery or radiology. You don't really get to use those skills or those aspects of your, you know, toolkit to help patients.
You know, it's just struck me. Something's just struck me. When you take a bottle of, I don't know, blah, blah, blah medication, and you look at the back on everything that could be harmful to you. You know, these are the side effects, da, 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 and there's like 20 of them. And this could cause some other stuff. So when you look at the back of a box of cannabis, you probably don't see anything that has a side effect, correct?
Josh, you want to take this one, Jay?
Yeah, you know, so I don't want to give the impression that there are no side effects with cannabis, right? Okay. You know, but the side effects that we're talking about aren't the same kind of, you know, we're talking about sleepiness, we're talking about getting hungry, we're talking about the side effects could basically be the feelings of being high, so a little bit of detachment. Sometimes people get this paradoxical anxiety. So there are and there can be side effects, which is why, you know, it's important to, you know, if you're using marijuana in a non-recreational sense, if you're using marijuana to actually treat a condition, it's important to have the guidance of a doctor. And that's part of back to what Cicely was saying. You know, before one of the reasons why there's so much stigma is because previously, when marijuana was prohibited all across the country, the only people who were able to counsel you on its use were drug dealers or, a hippie. You know, nothing wrong with hippies at all, but you know, if you want somebody to give you the evidence-based medicine, you have to talk to somebody who understands how to access research, decode the research, make sense of the research, and then explain it to somebody who doesn't have a science degree. You know, so But unfortunately, one of the reasons why you won't see at this point anyway, a list of side effects from any kind of cannabis product is because they're not evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, because marijuana is still a Schedule 1 medication, which means that, or Schedule 1 drug rather, which means that they haven't identified an actual medical use, which really couldn't be further from the truth. Just because they haven't identified it doesn't mean that there aren't a whole host of these. It's just that because it's federally illegal, they can't use federal money to do a bunch of research on it, and they haven't evaluated it. So we're way behind when it comes to that. It is important though, because there are some people who are under 18. We do not prescribe people who are under 18 THC products unless, very, very specific circumstances, right? People with severe psychiatric issues, or with a high risk of certain psychiatric issues.
So it all comes with limitations.
Yeah, exactly. Like their use needs to be monitored closely by a qualified physician. So the safest way to do it is to have the consult of a physician.
So what's your ultimate? Go ahead, Dr. Damas.
I was going to say, I think Dr. Moore made a good point in terms of the knowledge or the absence of it, right? Like, where were you getting advice from before, right? Was someone that was experimenting on themselves, and some anecdotal stuff. And it kind of reminds me of like, I got a 15-year-old, and he was like talking to me about going on his first date a couple of weeks ago and asking me things, right? And some of the assumptions that he had, I was like, where did you get this from? Like, who told you this? Like, who told you that was a thing? And he's like, I don't know. I was talking to my friends. I was like, exactly. Those guys don't know what they're doing either, right? Like, you're asking advice from somebody who's pretty much, in the past, people have gotten advice from people who are, not qualified or in the dark as much as they are. And so it's difficult for that, but, in this setting, I think we had a patient that was going in for a kidney transplant 2 weeks ago. One of our patients had lupus, and they had lupus nephritis, and they had end-stage renal disease, and went in for a kidney transplant and called us for a consultation with regards to how they, what they should do pre-op and what they can do post-op, right? And so this is like valuable information. One of the things, for example, I can tell you, is cannabis is an anticoagulant, right? So it makes it a little bit harder for your blood to clot, right? So, pre-procedure. Look at that. You didn't know, right? So pre-procedure.
I'm on blood thinners.
Right? So it can actually help you manage that a little bit, right? And it actually increases the efficacy of some of those blood thinners, like warfarin and some of the novel blood thinners, right? So it can actually increase the efficacy of that. So let's say you were on warfarin, right? It can actually keep the warfarin at higher levels in your system. And if you were subtherapeutic, it can help you get therapeutic quicker, or it can make you super therapeutic, where that you have a little bit, you're bruising a little easier, right? But if somebody's had a history of clotting, right, it's not a bad thing to be super therapeutic, right? You don't want to be over, you don't want to be too high, right? But to be a little bit above is okay, depending on the circumstances. But these are the kind of things that, we're able to offer people, right? And they're able to communicate that to their surgeons and to their providers. And Dr. Moore and I are able to have conversations at times with providers, or directly with providers, or through the patient with their providers, which I think when you say the future of medicine, this is what we're looking at.
So I have two questions. One is, you clearly must consult with other physicians, clearly with other patients. And how do your patients find you? Through word of mouth more than any other way?
Both. We get a lot of referrals from patients, referring friends and families, because again, they've found this wealth of information and knowledge, and really this sympathetic and validating source. You go in and you speak with a physician, and you're like, man, I've been smoking weed, or I've been thinking about this, and then the doctor's like, yeah, it's okay, and you're like, all right, thank God. Like, I'm really feeling really bad about this. So there's a value to that, right? And then there's the ability to say, hey, it's okay to tell your doctor that you're doing this, and if there's any problems, they can always, speak to us. And then we do get referrals. We get referrals from oncologists. We get referrals from primary care physicians. We get referrals from pediatricians. We have psychiatrists. Yeah. So we do.
You know what? Talk to that for a moment, because when you said pediatrician, when is a safe level or age for you to use the cannabis for a child?
Mm-hmm.
When is
for
that?
a child, huh? What was
Yeah,
the second
for a
one?
child.
Josh, you want to take this, or because I know
Yeah.
I've been yapping. Yeah, I get
Right, I mean-
yapping sometimes. So
We've got patients who are, I've got a patient who's 18 months old. She suffers from seizures and muscle spasticity. Now, for pediatric patients, we're not using THC. Again, there may be some special cases where that's the best route, but usually for people under 18, CBD is the best treatment. And one of the most well used, or one of the conditions that cannabis is most used for is for epilepsy. So CBD is a very well tolerated, safe anti-epileptic, so anti-seizure medication. And I think that's the biggest indication, I think, for pediatric patients. I don't know if you've got anything else that it's mostly seizures.
You are interchanging these terms, and please pardon my lack of knowledge. HTC or CDB?
Sorry,
Okay. Why are you interchanging? Tell me what that's all about.
Let's go back to that. So we were talking about cannabis, and another way that I look at it, I think Doc described it really well, but it is semantics, but cannabis can describe either the hemp plant or the marijuana plant. Okay, so the hemp plant in general, those are plants that have very, very low THC and higher CBD. So THC is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. That's the molecule that gets you high. That's the neurotropic, psychotropic molecule, the one that makes you feel the good feelings and high and all of that stuff, right? The CBD,
Utopia.
Right, exactly. The CBD is it has a lot of other medicinal benefits, but it doesn't make you feel high. So we talk about hemp, we talk about marijuana, but those are kind of interchangeable. When we're talking about marijuana, we're talking about THC, delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, and all the other cannabinoid molecules that come with that. When we're talking about hemp, we're more referring to the CBD, the psychotropic molecules, the ones that don't make you feel high, don't make you feel euphoric, but can still make you feel really good. Again, CBD, so that's cannabidiol, is a very, very good anti-anxiety medication. So I'm going to put this out there for the whole podcast world to know. I suffer from social anxiety. So for me, CBD is a huge part of my regimen. Cannabidiol is a huge part of my regimen to kind of manage. I took my CBD before coming on this podcast because, because I know in certain situations I have triggers that cause anxiety. So for pediatric patients with anxiety, with seizures, those are honestly the main two indications for pediatric patients, but CBD is very, very safe. And we get these referrals from pediatricians because, they know all there is to know about all of the pharmaceutical medications, but in order to go get that, to become qualified to recommend medical cannabis, medical marijuana, it takes a little bit of additional training, not a bunch, but it's still, to get the training to do all the research that it takes to understand and be able to safely prescribe or safely recommend this stuff. It takes a lot of additional energy. So we will get a lot of referrals from people like pediatricians who do know at least that CBD is a great treatment for seizures.
Yeah. I have one comment and then a question from a viewer. The comment is, I take a drug to make sure that the drug for my actual symptom works, and the side effect is worse than the actual diagnosis. I mean, that's horrific. That's horrific when you think about that. And then the question is, can you still call yourselves doctors? And is there do you go to school for this type of medicine?
We still
So I
call
guess the
ourselves-
question is, can you call yourself a doctor if it's not medical?
Yeah,
Ah,
it says it right there.
I think my I'd like to call myself a superhero sometimes, right? I think I transcended doctor, and now I'm on like, deity level, but I'll take doctor now. I'm just kidding.
You absolutely can call yourselves doctors because you went to school for it, number one, and it may
Yeah.
be a non-traditional form of medicine, but as you're stating, this is becoming more of our future of medicine. So absolutely, we cannot take away the knowledge, what you've earned all of these years.
Yeah, that's a great question to ask, and I think the person that asked the question can obviously tell the level of knowledge that, for example, Dr. Moore has here, right? So this is not, the understanding of the biochemistry and biophysics and the actual, pharmacokinetics, pharmacology of cannabinoids, cannabinoid system, and those type of things is difficult. Like you said, if you're a pediatrician, like, myself in radiology and him in general surgery, right? This takes a lot of effort. That's why we do get referrals, because other physicians are kind of like, I don't want to make this effort. Like, this takes time, right? You have to go home and study. Like, again, you have to do this stuff again. You've got to be committed, right? Because people are dependent upon you for their health and well-being. And so in order to recommend cannabis in any state, you have to pass a state certification. Medical licenses are governed by each individual state. And so your medical license is necessary in order to become a medical marijuana licensed prescribing or recommending physician, right? So if you don't have an active medical license that's in good standing, and an active DEA license, which is a Drug Enforcement Agency license, which allows you to prescribe controlled substances, you can't actually do this. So you have to be a physician in good standing in order to be involved in this, field whatsoever. And eventually, this will become its own discipline, its own subspecialty. There are many, like interventional radiology used to be just a part of radiology, which now it has its own residency and training programs, and a lot of things, evolve over time. Medicine evolves over time. You get these subspecialties, and it's basically based on people expanding the knowledge base and willing to contribute their efforts and their intellectual property and intellectual might to the advancement of medicine.
My answer to this viewer would be, it's like anything in medicine. You choose where you want your specialty to be.
Yeah.
Well, that's the level of pushback that you're going to get from many people, myself included, because I'm like, that's a little suspect, right? I don't know all of this, right? Because that's the level, and that's, again, to your point, you said it's a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of knowledge on my point. But as I'm sitting here listening to you, okay, there's some truth, but you do, and as with everything, even when I don't know what the hell I'm taking for my blood thinners, do your research. Do your research and research with other individuals who are using that same product and what it has, the effect that it has on individuals individually.
You got to be a little, I don't think, and I think Dr. Moore can speak to this, right? So he has a personal history. There's something in his life that, pushed him towards medicine, right? Like, so I've met very few people in my life who are physicians or in healthcare that don't have a personal commitment to this, right? Because it's something really difficult to do, and you have to get some satisfaction from it. And so I personally, I know he does, I get excited, I get a little geeked out as I learn new things, and I get to like exercise. He and I, we do like intellectual, I always say, like, we're going to get some reps in and work out. Yeah, right. So we're going to get some reps in and kind of like work ourselves out and kind of flex our muscles and get stronger. So I'm excited. Like, I love the opportunity to be a pioneer, right? That's a great there's a great sense of satisfaction in that. And I love, realistically, there's a great deal of satisfaction that comes with being able to provide people with something that they're missing in their lives,
Yeah.
Because I know what that's like. Like, I personally know what that's like. And so being able to, in return, pay it forward to somebody else gives me a great sense of personal satisfaction.
Your
So
work
final
is-
question.
Your work is amazing. I mean, I think what you're doing is just, it's fabulous. And there's so many people who need it. And the comfort level that you provide makes people feel better. They've all those things we talked about swirling around, and the bad connotation and all that. But, so, this makes people feel confident and better. And I've had migraines my whole life. I've had migraines since I was 14 years old. I'm 66. And, through all kinds of holistic, through diet, through food, through acupuncture, through all kinds of things, I want to find things that will help me to live a better life. And you're doing it. You guys are doing it. It's amazing to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Dr. Moore, Dr. Damas, final words here. What is your hope with what you're doing for the future of medicine, for the future of individuals? What's your final message that you'd like to share with us?
You wanna go, Dr. Damas?
I'll let you take us home. Bring us home, good looking.
Yeah.
Make him work for it, Dr. Dan.
The thing that brings me the most joy, honestly, about being in the medical marijuana field and having this as my passion and my subspecialty is that I really enjoy helping people who've not been failed, but who traditional medicine hasn't been able to help. I think it's really, really important to have somebody who can bridge that gap between traditional allopathic medicine and holistic medicine, because they're not two separate entities. We're talking about the human body, which is an extremely complex biomechanical entity, and we can manipulate the body in so many different ways, whether it's acupuncture, chiropractic medicine, sound healing, meditation, hypnosis, plants, other medications. The way that we started to produce actual medications that the pharmaceutical companies make is we learned a lot of these things from indigenous people who were using plants to begin with. The Tylenol, the aspirin that folks have in their purse and in their medicine cabinet right now came from the bark of a willow tree. And these are the roots of modern day medication, modern day medicine. So to think that we can separate those two things is a real disservice to the people. So I'm happy that I can bridge that gap. We want to bring the evidence-based knowledge, the science to people. We want to get rid of that stigma, and we want to let people know that it's okay to seek out other forms of treatment to fix your conditions or to improve your conditions and live your best life. And if medical marijuana happens to be one of them, then it's my privilege to be able to be one of the people that can help bring that to people.
Wow.
Well said.
That's good stuff. Well
Wow.
said. Well said. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Very much. Dr. Damas, thank you so much for sharing this information with us. And I'm so glad that you sent him to the golf tournament. So
I'll tell you,
yes,
the
do
funny
that
story
again,
about
do it
the
again.
golf tournament is I am horrible at golf, like absolutely horrible at golf, right? So I remember, and he that's one of his passions. So I was like, they need, one of us. They need one of us to play golf here, right? And he was like, that's so it's like, you got me off the hook of that one because if I would have been there, you guys would have been like, who is this buffoon? Who is that? Where'd they find that guy? He's the
Wow.
worst, right? So,
Dynamic.
yeah,
Very
but it was a
impressive to
pleasure.
both of you. Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Yep,
for
so-
joining us. And we look forward to having you on the show again and again and again, because I think
Mhm.
this subject has so much more to it than we're able to cover in 45 minutes. So I want to share a question that a viewer had for me, actually. And the viewer said, who do the Miami Dolphins play for? Not that. It's Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
I love
That
it.
is,
I love it.
that is, you know what? I think you couldn't have ended the show on a better note. But let me just give your audience and viewers some information. If they ever want to
thank you.
find any more information and some of the about us and what we do and what the practice has to offer, they can also all visit our website, which is drdamas.com, drdamas.com. They can find us on social media at Dr. Damas Wellness. Dr. Moore does a bi-weekly journal club, Thursday nights 7, where he discusses particular topics and goes into the relevant research for it. So adds the science to it. I think this next Thursday will be post-traumatic stress disorder and the use of cannabinoids for that, which is very poignant given that this is Memorial Day weekend and a lot of our veterans suffer from that. And then you can also find all the previous journal clubs that he's done. You know, I think the one before that was chronic pain. Before that was rheumatoid arthritis. Before that, so there's a lot of scientific information out there. So if people want to learn some more stuff, it's available for them online.
Thank you. Thank you. So guys, you know the drill. Cecily, Patty, and I, Dr. Damas and Dr. Moore are going to take care of our shit this week.
Okay.
You guys go and deal with your shit, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right.